Hi, welcome to Dawn Ross Therapeutic Yoga Movement Moment. So I was talking in my blog post in the newsletter this month about something that I've been discovering over the last couple of years and how I've been practicing, and that is that stretching is completely governed by the nervous system. So no matter how hard we pull, push, tug on a muscle, our nervous system has the last say. And at whatever point it decides that it doesn't feel safe, then the muscle will not be allowed to lengthen past there. So if we want to actually change our muscle and our tissues to increase range of motion of a joint, some people would refer to that as flexibility. I look at it as range of motion in the joint and our ability to move fluidly with control and coordination through that range of motion. So in order to improve that and change the muscle and tissue of the body, we also have to work with the nervous system, and the nervous system is the number one thing. So what I'm going to offer up for you today is just a movement that you can do if you feel like you've got tightness in the hips or the hamstrings, and play with it. Let me know what you think. Okay. So traditionally, if people have tight hamstrings, a lot of what they'll do is extending the leg up, pulling it towards them, really stretching the bejesus out of the back of the leg. And what I'm going to offer up is just to have you start laying on your back in an easy, restful position, and just take a second to just notice how your feet feel on the floor, all the bits of you that are in contact with the ground. And just over the next 3 to 5 breaths, just give yourself a chance to feel your bones. The bones of the skull, the rib cage, the pelvis, the bones of the legs. Just feel where the bones are in space. Okay? And then what you're going to do is just start to lift that right or left leg off of the floor so that you're bringing the femur bone into more flexion at the pelvis. Okay, and you're just going to do that a couple of times and notice what your tendency is. So notice if the weight shifts to the other side of the pelvis or the pelvis itself rocks. Notice if you drive off the other leg. Notice if you begin to engage with the upper back or the back of the skull or the neck. And we don't want to do any of those things. If we actually want to increase the control and coordination through the range that our leg moves in the pelvis, then we want the movement to be generated from here. Okay? And so you're going to bring your fingers to the front of that hip crease and then to the bottom ribs on the other side. And just take a second to just feel the connection between those two hands. And then to move the leg into more flexion, we do want to use the hip flexor. So you want to feel the tissue underneath your fingers really starting to engage. Okay? You don't want to have the ankle or the shin or the calf working to bring that leg into flexion. Okay? Then once into flexion, what you're going to do is rotate that leg bone in the hip socket. The key is we don't want to go from the knee or the foot, so you bring the other hand just to the inside of that knee so you can feel for if that's where you're moving. And you want to bring the movement down into that hip. Okay, and so then you're going to rotate from that hip. Make sure it's not coming from the knee. It's nice and easy. Go slow because this probably isn't how you've been used to rotating the leg bone. most people will drive with the knee, or there's something where the leg kind of moves out and the knee goes. Okay, and so I really want you to focus on cultivating that rotation of the leg bone from that joint. Keep the knee quiet. Get your body relaxed. And just breathing easy. Inhale and exhale here. Okay? And it isn't a race. Part of having the nervous system be part of the equation is we actually have to slow down. And then you're going to lift the lower leg once you've rotated. And then there might be a little bit more rotation that needs to happen to get that ankle onto the right knee. Okay? And through it all, the pelvis ought to remain quiet and still. So that's not to say I want you to hold the pelvis still. That's to say you're only going to move the leg the amount and in a range of motion that the bone can move in the pelvis without the pelvis going with the leg. And so when you first start playing with this, you might not get into this position. Okay? You might just rotate enough but not be able to get the ankle onto the knee, and just keep playing with that rotation without getting super grippy in the pelvis. Okay, then from here you're going to bring that hand to the outside of the thigh, and you're just going to begin to again just rotate and do just a little isometric of feeling that femur bone into the hand. Again, watch that it's not coming from the knee, and that you're just starting to wake up the tissue lower down and where that femur bone comes into the hip. Just doing some isometrics, moving that leg bone and some pressure into the hand. Only so much again that the pelvis doesn't shift position, and that you're not getting grippy or tense through the shoulders or the upper body, and that the breath remains easy. Okay, good. So now the next thing you're going to do is we're going to bring this up towards us into a figure four position. The key with this is that again that we're generating the movement now from that right hip flexor. So you're going to bring the fingertips to that right hip flexor in the bottom of the rib cage. And then in order to get the legs up, we want to use that left femur bone moving in the pelvis. That's what's going to bring the legs towards us. Okay, so just let the leg get lighter. You're going to move nice and slow. Again, because we don't want to be using the ankle or the foot, but we want to feel that hip flexor. Now, if the pelvis has to rock in order to get the leg off the ground, you're not going to come up to this position. You're just going to leave the foot on the floor. Okay, and then once that leg's come into flexion, you could hold on to the thigh. Okay, you might use a strap. You might just hold on to the fabric of the pants. But again, you don't want to come so tight in that that pelvis changes position and comes up off the floor. Okay, and then again you can play with a little bit of rotation in that left femur bone. And just get a sense for the tissue of the pelvic floor. The space between the tailbone and the pubic bone. The space between the two sitting bones. And how do your sitting bones feel? Are they sucked up into the pelvis right now? Or can you just take a few breaths and just feel your exhale out the sitting bones? And then only rotating that leg to the point that you're not feeling the sitting bones get grippy. Okay. Good, then you're going to lower that back down to the ground. Again, that idea of control and coordination, because we don't want to move against gravity and move a certain speed and then just allow momentum to take us out. Okay? Then you're going to unweight that leg and then again rotate that leg bone in the hip socket and bring the foot back down on the floor. So the first time through, it might feel like your brain is actually having to be quite involved because you're not used to moving your body that way. You just sort of disconnect the brain from the body and do and get into position, and away you go, and you're in the end point of your stretch. But if you play with this, and you're going to want to do the other side too, if you play with this, you're going to find that your range of motion of the leg bone and the hip socket, your ability to forward fold by moving that pelvis over the leg bone, the tightness that you might have experienced through the hips and the tissue of the glutes or the hamstrings, it's all going to start to change. So give it a try, get on your mat, play with it. I'd love to hear how it goes and your thoughts or comments that you have, and enjoy engaging your nervous system instead of just pulling and tugging on the tissue of your body in order to change it. Namaste.